Hi, and welcome to this SIAM series where I'm going through IT management approaches, methodologies, activities, and practices. I'll be giving you the main headline points and base foundation that you need to know. I'll also be discussing some of my real world application of these activities and practices in various organisations. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like the video, and click the bell to get the latest updates. Okay, so let's get to it. Today, I'm going to be covering off the key concepts in SIAM, Service Integration and Management, and I'm going to be talking about structure types, specifically around the hybrid sourced service integrators. So just point of clarification, when I talk about structures generally, I'm talking about SIAM structure in terms of things like governance structure, board structure, organization, contract management, license structures, all within SIAM. These will be separate videos. So there's 4 SIAM structures that you need to be aware of. There's the externally sourced integrator. There's a video on my channel, go and check it out. There's an internal sourced service integrator. Again, it's on my channel, go and check it out. We're going to be talking about hybrid service integrator now, so hopefully you'll get a better insight on that. And also I've got some information around lead supplier as well. So that's the 4th model. Check all of those videos out on my channel and get up to date. So as a quick reminder, in terms of the ecosystem, you have the customer, you have the service integrator, and then you have the service providers. And over those, you have various structural elements like boards or forums, working groups, and they're spread over the ecosystem of the customer, the service integrator, and the service provider. Okay, so let's dig a little deeper into this hybrid sourced service integrator. So basically, in this approach, the customer is collaborating, and so is working with another external organization to get that service integrator capability within the customer's knowledge base. So as with all the other structures we've talked about, the internal and the external and the lead supplier, the service provider roles are carried out by the internal or the external providers. And in this particular model, it's a situation where the customer is actually looking to retain a level of control over the service integrator, but perhaps it doesn't have the skills to perform some of the aspects or all of the aspects perhaps. The way that it's made up is the elements are provided by internal resources and from existing resources, while other elements, perhaps where the gap is, those are sourced externally. It's useful if you imagine there's an organization, they have the appetite to do SIAM, they want the service integration skills and the expertise and the knowledge, but they just need a little help by way of an external party to help acquire them. It can be a temporary arrangement, so it can be show us how to do this, get us up to speed, give us the knowledge, and then we will perhaps move to a completely different model. Perhaps that might be an external service integrator. So pictorially, if you imagine you have your customer organization and you have those retained capabilities in there, and then the next level down, the service integrator layer, you have this hybrid level. So it's a combination of the external and the customer in there, and then below that you have your existing service providers, or perhaps some of those providers are going to be retired, perhaps there's going to be new service providers, but either way it's a 3-layered approach: customer organization with retained capabilities, the hybrid, which is external and customer integration layer, and then underneath that, external service providers, or perhaps existing internal service providers. So when would you use the hybrid arrangement? So we've already mentioned it's good for where a customer wants to be a service integrator and it has the appetite and it has the will, it just needs a bit of help. It doesn't have perhaps the right people there in terms of capability, or perhaps not the right numbers in terms of resources, but the want, if you like, is there to learn and to become a service integrator. But perhaps as a temporary solution, there's a hand-holding exercise there, and this is where this hybrid would come in. They want to learn, they want to benefit from an organisation that does this, an external service integrator, and have that information. It gives a good level of flexibility, so it is a temporary arrangement. It can it can evolve into a permanent arrangement, but I've certainly seen it as a temporary arrangement. It's good if you have a customer, they want to retain an element of involvement in the service integration. So rather than just completely giving it to an external, they still want a level of involvement, but perhaps they just don't have the skills or the capabilities in-house to be able to perform that function. So it's created through collaboration, which is always a key word within the SIAM ecosystem. It's a collaboration between the customer and the external service integrator. So typically when we talk about collaboration, it's usually collaboration between the service integrator and the service providers and building that collaboration. In this case, it's a collaboration between the customer and the external service integrator, and they're almost they're their friend, if you like. They are the partner for the customer. They're helping them along and helping them with learning activity. We've already mentioned it. It could be a temporary or it could be a permanent type arrangement. Usually what happens in this model is once the customer feels confident enough to be able to run with this, there will be a handover. So it will come to an end by way of the customer may well say 6 months in or 12 months in or 2 years in or whatever the period of time is. Okay, I feel confident enough to be able to run on my own here, so please hand that service back over to me, and the customer will then run that as a fully internal solution. Or it may be it's kind of a halfway house, so perhaps the customer organization has said, actually no, we understand this now, we have the confidence in this model now, and we understand it enough. However, we're now going to hand it over to another approach, and that could be an external service integrator, or it could be a lead supplier structure. But that's typically how this ends, if you like, as the hybrid. It is a temporary arrangement. It can be permanent, but typically it will be a temporary structure that's been set up. Once the customer feels confident and is up to speed, it will be brought down, if you like, or once the customer's got confidence in the approach and how this is going to operate, they may then say, okay, now let's go to the next stage, which is let's move it to an external service integrator or lead supplier. In terms of resource augmentation, this structure, so it's normal to allocate specific and defined SI roles and SI functions and SI structures, and you would do that across either the customer or the SI partner. In this model, this differentiates the structure. So when we talk about resource augmentation, it can be applied to internally sourced structures. Pros and cons of each. So as you might imagine, the advantage is it allows the customer to be able to develop skills and resources. Once they feel confident, once the customer feels confident, they can either move it to a different type of model. The benefits can be obtained much quicker because the rather than the customer just trying to do it on its own, you've got a professional service integrator there holding their hand, which brings that that knowledge and that ability and blueprint, if you like, to be able to move over to a SIAM model. So in terms of doing SIAM, if you like, that can happen much quicker in this model because you've got an expert friend there to help you and bring you along. And certainly I've worked in these environments where that sort of best friend, if you like, can bring lots of benefits around financial savings and common mistakes and watch out for gotchas, and that skill and that knowledge of a service integrator can be invaluable to a customer because you've got an expert hand, if you like, there ready to be able to help with whatever it may be. And that could even be renegotiation of contracts or service level agreements or the end-to-end activities with various service providers. So it sounds great, sounds brilliant. So why wouldn't you do it? Okay, so let's now go on to some of the disadvantages as to this hybrid model. Clearly, the customer needs to develop capability, and what that means is there's a level of recruitment in there. There's a level of ongoing management of people. So there's a commitment from the customer there in order to resource this area correctly. There's a danger in this hybrid model that you end up, there's a level of duplication or there's a level of confusion as to who's actually doing what. Now, I'm a big fan of RACI matrix approaches, which is where you work out, okay, who's responsible, who's accountable, who needs to be consulted, who needs to be informed. And it really helps with this particular point. And I've used this in organizations previously. It's almost for the avoidance of doubt, who's doing that bit? For the avoidance of doubt, who's doing that bit? Where does the buck actually stop with? Who's the person doing it on a day-to-day basis? So, who's responsible for it? Who ultimately do we need to just make sure from an accountability perspective people are aware? So while this is a con, if you like, in terms of what's a pro and a con of the hybrid model, there is an opportunity for duplication and confusion and clarity there. But I would always counter that with, if you have a good RACI matrix in place, you're going to be clear as to who is doing what. It also can be a little confusing for service providers as well as to who is doing what. And again, I'll refer back to my RACI matrix there, but it's certainly something that needs to be addressed, and certainly watch out for it. The hybrid approach as well, and I have seen this in a number of organisations over the years. It's been spun up as a temporary arrangement, but actually it then suddenly turns into this long-term support model. This is how it works, and perhaps sometimes that's not always a good thing. And then the final negative point, or the disadvantage, was it does sometimes give the opportunity for a customer just to dip their toe in the water when it comes to SIAM. So perhaps not giving 100% commitment. They're not jumping in. They're just putting the toe in the pool, if you like, and getting an idea as to how would this work. So certainly reluctance to let go of things, for example. And unless you really kind of jump into SIAM, there's a real danger it's going to be difficult to demonstrate some of the value that a SIAM model can deliver. Okay, that's the end of the hybrid model. Please do subscribe, please do like, and click on some of the other videos that talk about SIAM and the structures.